No more delays. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes slamming the DOJ and FBI for failing to turn over documents on the anti-Trump dossier.
Everything about this smells. The real issue here is not foreign interference in the U.S. election, but domestic.
Caught red-handed, President Trump calling out China after reports that the country is illegally selling oil to North Korea.
The next step is additional what we call secondary sanctions, which are sanctions not against the North Koreans, but against the Chinese entities. Start having the Chinese feel the pain here.
9 very proud children taking an oath, becoming brand new American citizens, coming to the U.S. through either adoption or immigration.
I was really happy. I was proud of myself to be an American.
As we gear up for 2018, millions of Americans are looking for inspiration for their New Year's resolution.
Give yourself the gift of forgiveness. Somebody said when we forgive, we set the prisoner free, and the prisoner we set free is us.
Name that era. I don't know.
It's disco for sure. I'm the oldest one on the couch.
I got nothing. Nothing that's going to stop us, as we've got 2 hours of momentum in front of us. We're in the third hour of Fox and Friends. We are not Brian, Steve, and Ainsley. We are Seth Leland, Rachel, and Pete, and we're glad that you're here with us this morning.
But you guys have to tell you, I just love that story we just did on the kids who just became citizens. I mean,
that's a great story.
It's such a great story. The president talked about bringing in immigrants who love this country. Look at the faces of those kids and how proud they look.
And it's a huge part of what this president talks about is citizenship needs to matter. Loving your country needs to matter. Just being here is not enough. It is, do you want to become a citizen and be a part of the fabric of America as a participant? It's a huge point, and a larger point that is oftentimes missed.
Yeah, I can think of few people who love America more than Geraldo Rivera, Fox News correspondent. He loves all parts of America, including the beautiful Telluride, Colorado, where you are now. Good to see you, sir, as always.
Thank you. Wish you were here.
Yeah, so do we. So do we. Trust us. Devin Nunes is ripping the DOJ and the FBI for failing to turn over those subpoenaed documents and witnesses that are related to the anti-Trump dossier. It brings up an important question we've been talking about all morning, Geraldo. If there was nothing to hide, if there was no cover-up inside the DOJ and the FBI, if there had been no wrongdoing during the Clinton investigation, why slow walk and delay handing over these documents?
Well, I think that, first of all, the most important point is that what has been revealed in the last several months is that the FBI and its parent, the DOJ, are just like everybody else in Washington. They are politicians. They are politicians with points of view. They have gripes. They have leanings. And they have clearly used their anti-Trump feelings to, I think, affect the course of this investigation. This is just, I think, what Nunes has revealed is what we suspected all along. They are playing this as partisans, as players, and it should affect the course of the investigation. Now, in terms of the dossier, the reason the dossier is important for these legislators on the Intelligence Committee to have is that it was used as the basis for the warrants to bug Trump Tower, to go after Flynn. It was used as the basis for the FIFA warrants. It is now fair game, and we should see it, because all of Russiagate, it turns out, is based on this silly dossier from 2013 and the Miss Universe and the Golden Showers and so forth. We should see it, reveal it to be the fraud it is, bankrolled by this party and then that party, and used to attack the President of the United States. It's over now. I think that Mueller should have the decency now, as the new year approaches, to say, okay, we did our best, we took our shot, whatever Russia did, Trump did not do it, let's get past this.
But Geraldo, as you've said, they will not let it go. The president yesterday in Florida gave an interview, impromptu, 30 minutes, to the New York Times, certainly an adversary of his, where they asked him, again, are you going to fire Bob Mueller? What do you think? He repeated, as he said from the very beginning, from day one, there was no collusion. He also basically insinuated that he thinks Bob Mueller will be fair. I mean, he's settled into the position that finish your investigation, get it done, because there was no collusion. What do you make of him having this kind of disposition to the New York Times?
I think, first of all, the president, like me in a much more minor way, has a love-hate relationship with the New York Times, the party, the newspaper of record. If you grew up in New York, you wanted the approval of the New York Times, even though you hated the New York Times. And I think the president is in that situation right now. And the fact that he gave 30 minutes to the New York Times, I heard one of the commentators last week saying that he may go his entire presidency without giving another network TV interview. I don't know if that's true or not, other than to Fox News. But talking to the New York Times is important. And to mention to the New York Times in the strongest terms, I think he mentioned it 30 times over the course of the 30 minutes, that there was no collusion. If the New York Times, assigning its best and brightest reporters to this story, now months and months later, has not come up with any evidence that the Trump campaign colluded, quote unquote, whatever that means, and even though that's not illegal, colluded with the Russians to affect the outcome of the 2016 elections. If the New York Times, putting aside the DOJ for a second, if the New York Times, with all of those well-funded, smart guys who hate the president, if they could not find evidence of collusion, isn't that the best evidence? Now let's move on. The president wants the affirmation from his hometown paper that there's no collusion there.
But will they let it go? I mean, there's no indication that the left, that the media is ever going to let it go, Geraldo. And just another point, I mean, we saw earlier some footage from Kevin McCarthy. I mean, Congress is really frustrated that these papers, these documents haven't been turned over. The only reason why they wouldn't turn it over is there must be something embarrassing, right?
Well, I think that's part of it, Rachel. I also think that as a lawyer, in the discovery process, you drag your knuckles, you drag your feet, you do the least possible you possibly can for as long, you delay as long as you can, particularly if the evidence is exculpatory. In other words, if you're a prosecutor and you've got something that proves that the target of your investigation is innocent, you're not going to rush it out. You're going to take your time. You're going to make real sure, are we really sure we don't have it on this guy? Yeah, we're really sure. Eventually, they'll get to it. And I think that what Jay Sekulow, the president's private attorney, has been doing, and others, Ty Cobb and others, is trying to suggest to the special prosecutor, yes, we've been very patient. Yes, we've let you do your job. We might have said this or that on Twitter or here or there, but the fact of the matter is we've laid off. We've given you free rein to take the best shot you can at us. Now you have the decency in the new year to say to us and to the American people, there's no there there.
Geraldo, we've got a Friday edition of a New York Times twofer. There was another article on the front page of the New York Times. By the way, in that 30-minute interview, the president said, "You're the failing New York Times, but if I don't get reelected, you'll be the failed New York Times because you won't have anything to cover."
I think can we get didn't you cross that out?
Labeled it the failed New York Times this morning. But the second story I want to get your opinion on is not here at home, but overseas. They did a deep dive into Trump's foreign policy. And the headline, at least online, was Trump the Insurgent breaks with 70 years of American foreign policy. In print, Insurgent Trump alters unpredictably America's global role. Let me pull out one quote from the article and then get your response. From this article, it wrote, "Most foreign leaders are still trying to get a handle on him," said Richard Haass, a top State Department official in the George W. Bush administration, who's now president of the Council on Foreign Relations. "Everywhere I go, I'm still getting asked, help us understand this president, help us navigate this situation." Isn't that an asset in that America's foreign policy has been predictable and stale for a long time, creating a lot of problems? He's shaking it up, and the uncertainty of our adversaries, is that really a problem?
I used to have a guy in my high school, Richie Utter. He had a short temper. And we never wanted to mess with Richie because you never knew. Sometimes be the great Richie, sometimes be the crazy Richie. You never wanted to mess through. I don't mind having a president that has a little bit of Richie Utter in him. So I just want to say that. I also want to say, look at what he has accomplished rather than what he has said. President Obama, as he was campaigning in 2012, made a big point about Osama bin Laden is dead, General Motors is alive. Yeah. Bin Laden dead, GM alive. You remember that. Obama really went on after in 2011. He used that as his campaign slogan. Now translate that to today. Here you have not Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda didn't die. Al-Qaeda just morphed into Al-Nusra and ISIS, more particularly, and they created a country. They actually got a country under the end of President Obama's watch. He called in 2014. He called the ISIS the JV team. So the president has crushed ISIS. He has crushed the caliphate. He has eliminated the physical entity called the caliphate that ISIS controlled. So in terms of foreign policy, he has achieved a fantastic goal. He has eliminated or 95% he has defeated our terrorist enemy. On the economy, it's not just General Motors is alive. The economy is booming. The stock market has had more record highs than it's had at any time in its long history. It's booming. Unemployment is down. Wages are coming up. The middle class is beginning to prosper. I don't know what the effect of the tax cut is. We'll see. But I think that this president has done a wonderful job in terms of balancing his flamboyant private life and his sober, traditional Republican point of view having to do with foreign policy. I worry a little bit about NAFTA. I think they'll work it out. Trans-Pacific trade, I don't know enough about it. If the president doesn't like it, I think what he's really saying is he wants to negotiate it. And some of these other deals, climate change particularly, I want the United States to be in the lead on climate change, but I don't want us to be stupid either. So I think this president has been in an understated, or rather an overstated, exaggerated, crazy way, has performed in a very modest, moderate, traditional way.
Well, of course, the New York Times is obsessed with so-called global climate change. The 99% of Americans are not. So that's why when they look at the critique of his foreign policy, most Americans say climate change is not part of my menu either. Geraldo Rivera, thanks a lot. Appreciate your time this morning.
Happy New Year, Geraldo.
Happy New Year.
You got it.
Thank you.
There's more headlines than just the New York Times this morning.
There are more, and Jillian has been poring over them all morning.
Good morning, guys, and good morning to you at home. Happy last Friday of 2017, by the way. We begin with a Fox News alert. The death toll rising to 9 in Egypt after 2 gunmen on a motorcycle targeting Christians opened fire outside a church. It happened hours ago, just south of Cairo. One of the gunmen was shot dead. A manhunt is on right now for the other. Local media reports the dead attacker had an explosive belt. 2 other bombs were defused near the church. No one has claimed responsibility, but ISIS has killed dozens of Christians in church bombings and shootings in Egypt this past year, including twin bombings at churches on Palm Sunday. Also breaking right now, we've just learned that 4 children are dead as a result of natural gas line fueled fire that killed 12 people at an apartment building in New York City. Investigators reportedly calling it suspicious. People rushing out of their homes in below freezing temperatures to escape the inferno.
People were screaming, and that's how we knew it was trouble, because people were screaming, fire, help, fire, help. We knew it was trouble.
The last I heard was my mom text my sister that they were trapped in the room. And that's it.
More than 170 firefighters worked for hours to get the flames under control. This is the city's deadliest fire in 27 years. Turning now to extreme weather, the brutal cold already turning deadly. 2 people in Chicago killed by hypothermia. Millions across the country now dealing with bone-chilling temperatures. In the Northeast, temperatures are 15 to up to 30 degrees below average. This fountain in Philadelphia that you'll see right there, completely frozen, and ice trapping boats in this harbor in Maine. Satellite images also showing the Great Lakes frozen over. The Arctic blast is expected to continue into the new year. Oh, gosh, it's hard to talk about it. It's hard to feel it. It's hard to see it. It's just tough, guys.
Cold when the freeze over. Yeah, thanks a lot, Jillian. All right, well, a new report revealing officer fatalities are down 10% this year. Could it have anything to do with this?
America stands strong with our men and women in blue. Believe me, we stand strong together.
From Black Lives Matter to Blue Lives Matter, a former NYPD lieutenant weighs in next.
Plus, Christmas is over, but the NFL is still playing the Grinch. They'll let players kneel for the national anthem, but these very adorable Jingle Bell cleats banned. Does that make sense?
Let's go. You're showing off in circles down by the riverside. You like to make me nervous, so I'll move in real tight. Come on, throw it in park.
Welcome back. Well, a new report revealing police officer fatalities, are down 10% this year. Some law enforcement leaders thanking President Trump, saying his strong support for the police has boosted morale and even saved lives.
America stands strong with our men and women in blue. Believe me, we stand strong together.
With us on the couch to weigh in, former NYPD Lieutenant, U.S. Army veteran Dr. Darren Porcher. Good to see you, sir, as always.
Thanks for having me.
How much of this is correlation and causation? Great news that the number of police officer shot and killed in the line of duty is down. Is that related to President Trump's getting behind law enforcement, or the two are happening simultaneously?
Well, the president is at the head of the executive branch of government. The executive branch of government is focused on law enforcement because he appoints the attorney general. The attorney general has under his control the federal law enforcement agencies like FBI, DEA, etc. So the president does have a specific and a direct correlation to the reduction in the crime numbers. And when we look at what President Trump ran under when he was campaigning, he was very specific, and he was looking to gain a precipitous drop in crime on a national